During the course of the overnight trading session, the S&P 500 made it its sixth all-time high in a row in as many days. And that just shows where we are as a global market, with the world's leading market index once again hitting record highs in overnight trading before pulling back into the close. We've got very buoyant trading conditions all around the globe. And despite the fact that we're very focused currently on reporting season, both here in Australia and in the US, it was the macro that really drove the market overnight. And the announcement of a trade deal between the EU and the USA was seen as a real positive for the market, not just for the deal itself, which seems to lock in 15% tariffs for the EU, but also because of the implications it may have for other deals. And in fact, President Trump was quoted as saying during his private tour of Scotland that they were speaking with Chinese delegates at that time. And he's referring to talks that are happening in Sweden between Chinese and US trade negotiators. There's been reports in a number of organs that are closely linked to official spokespeople that suggest that the tariff that were due to be introduced on August the 12th by the US on China will be rolled back for another 90 days. And given the credibility of the reports and the outlets they're appearing in, a lot of investors have put faith in those reports and expect that that's what will happen. And with a trade deal with the EU and a deferral of tariffs on China, we've got the world's three largest economies broadly in agreement on trade, and that's a positive for markets. And we saw that flow into trading. Euro markets traded very strongly. In the US, it was a bit more of a mixed bag, with most of the indices finishing close to flat. A small gain for the Nasdaq, a small loss for the Dow, and flat on the S&P 500. But the overall benign conditions meant we saw a strengthening US dollar because of that trade deal. We did see some pressure on bond yields. They sold off modestly in US trading, but the overall impact of that stronger dollar has taken some of the heat out of some other asset classes. We saw pressure on Bitcoin, and we also saw pressure on gold prices in trading overnight. But one big winner was the oil price. It spiked over the deal and the pressure that the US is now putting on Russia to sue for peace in the Ukraine, or the potential for Russia to take action against that is what has concerned oil markets, and that spike we saw in oil prices is likely to feed into trading today. Turning to some of the individual stocks, we saw some good performances in reporters. Meme stocks are back in fashion after that Krispy Kreme run up and collapsed last week. It does appear that there's a halo effect, but we're also seeing strong interest back in the semiconductor space. And after a fairly rough period, we saw good gains for stocks like AMD and SMCI. SMCI, the chart here, up 10.2% as investors anticipate reports next week. Also the idea that we might be seeing a more peaceful trade deal between the US and China helped feed into that sentiment that pushed the semiconductor stocks so hard. We're now turning to the Australian reporting season, and we're starting to get into the swing of it, and we've already seen some dramatic impacts. Uranium miner Boss Energy, one of the features of trading after reporting yesterday that it had revised downward its estimates for production from its Honeymoon mine in South Australia. Now, this is one of the few producing uranium mines in Australia, and unfortunately, the news for Boss Energy shareholders was all bad. Not only did the company reduce its estimate of its production from the year from around 2.5 million to just over 1.5 million pounds, a massive reduction. It also reduced its estimate of the reserves at the mine, and it increased the estimated cost of mining that uranium. And this triple hit saw its shares absolutely thumped in trading, down 44% in a single session as investors reassessed the outlook for Boss Energy. Now, it's not surprising alongside this news that the CEO has stepped down, and the new chief operating officer will step up, but that sort of change is no comfort to shareholders in the short term. We also saw pressure on other reporters. Stanmore down by 3%. I'd just like to go back to that Boss Energy chart here. You can see from the chart the dramatic impact and the fall that it suffered from yesterday. You can see too that fall took it below its previous lows, and that's a suggestion that there could be further tumbles ahead for Boss Energy, something to look out for. So we have got a focus on local resource reporting today with groups Sandfire, Ramelius and Liontown all reporting. Liontown, one of the key players in the lithium space and one that will be watched very closely, not just for its own operating report, but for the outlook for the sector and particularly prices realised. Sandfire, a regular in the headlines, often controversial, should be an interesting report, and Ramelius, many shareholders will be looking forward to what the company has to tell us about its half-year result.